Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. This is part 2 of our conversation about why people get disconnected from their families. And specifically, we're talking about today, the reasons why.
The actual reasons.
Last week, we talked about the issues, and we got really personal, the two of us, about things that we have been dealing with. And that's actually a little bit more personal than we've been in a while.
It was good, though.
And I think it's important.
It's good to share.
Yeah, because I think it's relatability, and we're talking about things that I know so many of you listening and watching deal with as well. And if you're not dealing with it, you know somebody who is. You've heard these stories. So this is all about being real and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Okay. So why is it that people go low contact or no contact with family members, which, if you will recall in last week's episode, I'm seeing quite a bit of this in the millennial and the Gen Z population, not as much in the Gen X. I'm hearing and watching Gen Zers and millennials go low contact or no contact with their parents. So they are a different population of young people who are much more therapy savvy and reading all about mental health, which I think is wonderful. They're working on their emotional intelligence. And they are less tolerant, for better or for worse. I don't know. They're less tolerant of their parents or the Gen X or the baby booming population. So I'm not going to have an opinion about that because, like I always say, it's nuanced and it's case by case. There's times when I may have a coaching client or a therapy client and I completely support them. Well, I'm always supporting my clients. And it's not my job to really give advice or have an opinion, especially as a therapist, about what they do. But there are times when I have really worried about, you're going to go no contact with this family member. I do worry that you may have regrets about that down the road. So we really spend a lot of time exploring the reasons why somebody wants to do that. I've seen more low contact than no contact. And I think that's a little bit, air quote, healthier than no contact. No contact is a total cutoff. And that does worry me. And I know it worries therapists. There's times you got to do it. There's times you got to do it, especially if there's abuse. But
there could be like moments of no contact too.
Over the months and years.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right. So today we're talking about what are some of the reasons. Okay. We're going to get into specifically what, I have heard and seen throughout the years. So
this is what pushes people to make this choice.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get started, please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you are interested in being coached by me. My email, hello@annamarcolene.com. I would love to get on a call with you and love to talk to you and see if we could work together. Would love that. And if you're in Illinois, please reach out to me if you want therapy. So no matter where you are in the world, if you want coaching, I can coach you, life coaching, personal development coaching. If you're interested in psychotherapy, you have to be in the state of Illinois, and let's get on a call together. All right. So number one reason, growing up with toxic communication patterns. This can be persistent criticism, belittling, or just feeling you've been invalidated by your family. And you just get to the point where you're like, I'm done. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be around it. Chronic negativity or conflict that creates emotional distress. Somebody is chronically negative, and it's something that they're spilling out into their family life that's about them, but they just lack the self-awareness to deal with it or to look at it. And everybody else has to pick up what you throw down. And, as we get older, we're less willing to take that on. And we can't stand being around the conflict. It's distressing.
It is, yeah. I wonder, is it because as you get older, you realize you're going to be around not as long? You realize the end is coming for you at some point. Like you're closer to the end than you are to the beginning.
I'm talking about Gen Zers and millennials who do this more.
Yeah, but
they're in their 20s and 30s and early 40s now.
Right, but you're not a kid. You're middle-aged.
Many of you are in independent careers, live outside the home, have your own families, your own children.
Yeah, and I think you realize
You've got work stress.
Yeah, and the importance of the journey, not the finish. Why make it tough during your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, tougher? And if you have that opportunity to do that and make some things not be as impactful for you in a negative way, you're choosing to do that now. So you're bolder. You're making a bolder statement, right?
Sure.
And you're deciding to do that.
I think you just get to the point of being done. I think that another reason in these toxic communication patterns, I hear a lot about manipulation that goes on, being spoken to in a way that feels manipulative or is manipulative, being gaslit. No, that didn't happen. That's not right. That could be a mind screw. Somebody telling you what you remember is your reality, telling you that that didn't happen. And I think that there are times when maybe two people in a family remember something differently. They just do have different memories of something. But to say that versus saying to the person, no, that didn't happen. Well, to that person, that's how they remember it, or that's what someone told them happened. Finding a way to deliver the message is really what we're talking about here. And I think that there's such poor communication that can go on in families because we don't care as much about communicating well, like maybe we do with our friends and our colleagues and coworkers and bosses and even our people that we're supervising, because we care about how we look, we care about how we come across, we care about our reputation. And with our family members, we don't care so much about that. And
they'll always be there.
We'll just say it and they'll always be there because we take them for granted.
Right. Which is not necessarily a positive thing.
Right.
It's just, but fact.
But we watch the way we deliver the message.
Yeah.
And I always say this to my clients. It's always about the delivery. It's how you deliver the message. I really do believe there's not much that you can't say to somebody. You can have hard conversations. Watch how you deliver it. Watch the tone in your voice. Watch the pitch. Watch if your voice comes up. Stay calm. Take some deep breaths. Find a way to deliver that message about what you think and you feel. Staying calm and regulating your emotions. The person was more likely to be able to hear it.
That's a life skill that's huge.
I know. It's a big one that I teach.
Yeah.
Because most of us didn't learn emotion regulation skills and we didn't learn how to communicate when you're in an emotionally charged situation. We just didn't learn it. We didn't see it. You all know, who are listeners of the podcast, I've talked about this so many times. Many of us didn't have mentoring around good communication. Even if you took communication college, it's not the same as mentoring from like your mom or your dad, or I don't know, maybe.
I don't think that even counts, right? You take a class in college, you're getting some good textbook info. That's about all you're getting.
I have had clients over the years who spent quite a bit of time with other parents of their best friends.
Yeah.
They spend a lot of time at another person's house, and they will tell me, I learned from watching those parents.
Sure.
I learned from spending a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandfather and how they treated one another, or my aunt and uncle. We learn by watching the people around us. They are our first teachers. You're right.
Yeah.
So another reason why we tend to go low contact or no contact is a lack of boundaries. And I talk about boundaries all the time. Disrespecting people's personal space, their choices, and their boundaries. When you try to have boundaries and people just run roughshod over them, that's going to, in a way, force someone to back up. They're going to just back away from you as time goes by. How much is somebody going to tolerate that? Especially if they're working on themselves, right? The opposite is enmeshment, where your individual autonomy, I've talked about this before too, your individual autonomy is not respected. Your mother wants to be enmeshed with you. She doesn't seem to understand that at some point I leave off and you pick up and you live your own life. I see that more with women than I do with men, but I see moms and dads who are enmeshed with their children, and then the children grow into adulthood and want to strike out. It's the important developmental stage. This is Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory. The important stage starts around 18 of separation/individuation. So it's separation, individuation, where you leave your family of origin, you psychologically leave, and you start to develop a sense of identity outside of your mom and dad. And that's that healthy development, healthy move into adulthood, where we will keep many of the values that our moms and dads raise us with, and we decide what we keep, what we like, and what feels congruent with us. And then we will also drop off some things that my mom and dad value that I don't value. I don't see the world that way. I don't want to look at the world that way. That's a really healthy separation, individuation. And when you start to do that and your parents see it and they give you a hard time now in your 20s and 30s, you know, I said this last week, they make the snarky comments or their sarcasm. That's because they may have been enmeshed with you and you're trying to break out and do something differently. They may use guilt. They'll guilt you or use some fear as a means to control you, to keep you down, keep you back emotionally and psychologically. And what happens is with those lack of boundaries, adult kids are just like, I'm out, or I'm going low contact here because I can't be around this.
Right.
Can't do this.
Have there been any studies on at what point the separation starts to happen? At what age? Is it different if the separation starts to happen at 18, 19?
It can happen at any age.
But I mean, the separation can, but
the separation individuation phase?
yeah.
It's around 18 to 24.
Yeah.
That's the years of that.
But does it make it tougher and the results worse if you don't start separating until you're 27, 28, 29?
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of that.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. And remember, these people are with me because I'm either coaching them or there is a pain point in their life. The people who come to therapy and even people who come to coaching, there's something that's not working. There's something they want. So the coaching people want to better it. They're in the present and they want to move forward in their future and they want it to be better. Therapy clients do too, but we're going to spend more time going down in the past. They tend to have a little bit more pain, but they've reached a point where they realize that this is not working for me. And sometimes there's a conscious awareness of that it comes from family of origin when they start with me. But what happens is they fully are able to crystallize their thoughts when we start working together, when I am asking about family and the questions I ask, they start to say, oh, yeah, that's a piece of this here. But I do think that deep down inside, intuitively, we know that there's something in our family that's kept us back. You've lived long enough when you're 24, 25, 26 to know that other people do it differently. Yeah. You've had enough conversations with your friends,
probably, don't you think,
boyfriends or girlfriends.
Yeah. And you probably get antsy at that point, right? Like if you leave home at 18, 19, and you don't really air quotes come back, you do, but you don't come back and live life, right? But so you start to get
what do you mean?
Well, you start to get antsy that like at 25, 26, if you haven't actually flown, like you haven't launched yourself, like you're probably getting antsy because you're like, you feel like you're still under that umbrella. You feel like you're still being constrained by some of that stuff, that family history, and just maybe it's becoming too much. It's becoming too heavy.
Yeah. And I think even if you live close by, I think if you live in the same town, I think I've had clients who've had to move states away to move away from this dysfunction in their family.
Okay.
They've had to go across the country. They've had to be a 3 or 4 hour drive plus away because that was the only way, because if they were in the same town or same city, there'd be all this pressure to always be coming back and visiting.
Sure.
So my question is, why is it that you're doing that? I'll never forget when I was in graduate school, we had a family therapist who taught one of the advanced family therapy courses. He was excellent. It was so hard to get into that class. And I remember signing up and running. Back in those days, you had to go in person to the registration office to register for your next semester.
So true.
Yeah. And I remember trying to get down there like 8 a.m. when the door opened because I wanted to get into this class because he was such a great family therapist. And I'll never forget, he said, it's no mistake that the kids who move far away from home do that. For whatever reason. It doesn't have to be about a trauma. It doesn't have to be about pathology or severe dysfunction, but there is a reason. And I couldn't help but think of myself, one of 8 kids, and I went to Chicago for graduate school when I was 22, and my life kept me here. But it was interesting. I could not have gotten out of the area I grew up in fast enough. I didn't know what it was about. I just needed to leave. I think I'm just an independent individual. And I'm not going to get into my own analysis of it because I spent time in my own therapy working on what that's about for me. But I never forgot it. And I still think it today. And I do think it's true. Many people go away. There's a reason.
Yeah. And you might not even know what that reason is in the moment, right? You might not.
No, I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And so when it was Dr. Rutledge said that, I'm like, that's so interesting. We had to do like a whole project on this. So I really had to do a deep dive in class about why I left. That was for me, my project, why I left home. So I'm not going to go into all my stuff here, but it was very enlightening. And I remember talking to my parents about it.
Yeah.
And they were so curious about this project I was doing, and they didn't disagree.
It's interesting.
So, okay. All right. Another one reason why people are going low contact, no contact is narcissistic abusive behavior. Narcissistic or abusive behavior. They experience emotional abuse, physical abuse, or verbal abuse, and they're not having it. They're not doing it. Narcissistic tendencies, such as a lack of empathy or excessive self-centeredness of a parent. Usually it's of a parent. Just really, really self-centered, and they lack empathy. They just, I have met people who just don't seem to have an empathy gene. They just don't have a gene. They're so defended. They're so up in their own head about themselves and their self-image. They cannot put themselves in somebody else's shoes for even a minute. That's going to push your kids away from you.
I would think so.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
And then what happens is when sometimes the parent feels, and I'm going to say parents because this is in general, remember, in general, what I have seen, the parent sees this happening and will use fear, guilt as a way to control them, guilt the hell out of them to try to control them, make them stay or make them stay close by or make them call me more, text me more, or fear that something might happen to me. And then what's going to happen? You're going to feel really guilty if I die in a car accident.
Right.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Now, remember, I'm going to say no one's perfect here. I've jokingly said to my own kids, like, I might be gone someday. And I've done that to guilt
I
them.
think you've said it to me, actually.
Yeah, I have. I have used that. And I say it in jest, but
Right.
it's obnoxious. I've said that. I know I've said, Mom, stop saying that. That's obnoxious. Stop saying that. I'm like, you're right. You're right. I need to stop saying that.
Well, do you? I mean, the other side of this coin is
Yeah.
that you are going to be gone someday, right? Like, I should appreciate the fact that the time I have with you now, as well as our kids, there is another side to this.
I know, Tim. It's a good point. And I hear you because I think that when you get to our age, we're in our later 50s and we're going into our 60s now, we are starting to see what's important, what's not important, all the things that matter and the things that don't matter. And we see with the generations above us and the losses, the people who have passed on and died and the losses, and you want to impart that wisdom onto your kids. I jokingly and just say that to my kids. And like you said, I've just said it to you, but
Yeah.
truth be told, that's not right. I mean, don't guilt people.
I'm not suggesting you should, but yeah.
Like don't guilt people into having a closer relationship with you. Instead, say what it is you want. Say what it is you need.
Yeah.
I would love to spend more time with you. I wish that we could set up a coffee date. I wish that you would come over on Sundays for family dinner. Can we set up a monthly dinner, whatever it might be? Say the thing you need to say. Say what it is that's in your heart that's weighing heavy on you, in your feelings, in your heart. Say it. Find a way to say those things. That's what we're struggling with. We're still struggling. And maybe it's more our generation and the baby boomers. We struggle with being vulnerable. We struggle with showing our underbelly, the soft spots within us, because we think it doesn't mean strength, or it means that I'm a wuss or something. It's kind of the old messaging that we got in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even 90s. Don't do that. Find a way to say what it is you want and you need from your family members.
Yeah.
We wouldn't guilt them.
Yeah. Well, I think just being more transparent, right? Like
Yeah.
there's moments in all aspects of our life where the more transparent we can be, the better it would be for everybody.
And when you make yourself vulnerable, and don't judge yourself on your vulnerability, and don't worry that people are judging you. I said this on the podcast before. I'll say it again. No one cares. No one's really spending a lot of time thinking about, oh, she was vulnerable. He was vulnerable right now. He sounded so stupid. No, they're probably going to be like, wow, that was different. Dad doesn't really ever talk like that. Wow, Mom was vulnerable right there. Like, that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
No one's talking about you like that. We are self-centered individuals. We care more about how we look and we show up in the world. We think more about ourselves than we think about other people. So say the need, say the want, say the desire.
Yeah.
Okay. Take that risk.
And I think for like you and I, like we're part of that Gen X, right? Like we're arguably that last generation out there before technology started rolling big time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Email, computers, all of that stuff. We are the last generation that grew up without that. Everybody else is like, that was part of their fabric from the get-go.
Right.
So we're trying to straddle this fence, which is kind of a weird thing, from a 70s moment to a 2025 moment where it's like drastically different. So it's like, and in our head, the experiences are very different too. And it's how people act and it's how people communicate. We are like trying to figure that out in real time versus somebody else that's younger than us who's maybe in their 40s or 30s or 20s. This is all they know. It's how it goes. So it's very different,
Very different world experiences and life experiences.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. Another reason why people go low contact or no contact is going to be addiction and enabling. So substance abuse or any sort of addiction that leads to chaotic or harmful behaviors. People, and this is appropriate, people need to back away from that. They don't want to be around the chaos. They don't want to be around the drama. And watching people with their harmful behaviors, and now it can just spread like a contagion in that family. That will be appropriate to step away.
Sure.
And sometimes you got to go no contact or do the tough love because it's just really mentally unhealthy for the rest of the family to be around that. I'm speaking about addiction in general, substance use disorders, alcohol addiction, drug addiction. You've got all kinds of addictions, but ones that cause a lot of chaos and drama can be really, really hard to be around. There's gaming addictions, there's porn addictions. Porn addictions really do affect couples. And we haven't gotten into that. We talked about that very much on the podcast, but pornography is like an epidemic, at least I know in this country, with men. And it's affecting relationships in a negative way. But there's all kinds of addictions, but I'm talking about ones that really are harming to the people around you. It makes sense that you'd back away. And then the family members who just are enabling the addict and they refuse to acknowledge that there's a problem, and it just creates further strain. So you've got the enabler who cleans up the vomit when the person came home drunk or passed out and puts a blanket on them and helps them get in the shower. You do that over and over. You're enabling them. Praying, and you do it for good reasons because you love them. You're wanting them to get better. It's not working though. They're not getting better.
Yeah.
It just does feel nice to
just
have somebody help
it.
clean up your mess when you wake up hungover and like, oh my God, what did I do? And someone comes in and helps, cleans up and takes care of you. What can I get you? Can I get you a cup of coffee? Do you want McDonald's? I'll go run to McDonald's for you. I'm just giving a very general example here, but enabling to other people when maybe, let's say it's like I'm the mom and somebody comes to me, another child comes to me about one of the other kids. These are all our adult kids. And I make excuses for them. And I say, well, they're not that bad. They don't do it that much. Oh, come on. You're just jealous of their success. Like, no, I'm not talking about their success or job, Mom. They come home, let's say drinking, they come home drunk and you just like kowtow to them. Why don't you say anything? Why don't you just enabling them? And we're all affected here. And it's terrible to be around them with their outbursts, their drama. And yeah, then I would be enabling that child and not listening to the other one. And that's about me and something that's going on within me that I have is, we call that codependency. There's some codependent traits coming out in me, but that's what will cause those other kids to be like, I'm out, I'm not coming around as much. I'm either low contact or I can't talk to you right now. I can't have a relationship with you right now, Mom, because every time I come home and so-and-so's here, this is insane.
Yeah.
It's affecting my mental health.
It can be
now.
predicted by them.
Yeah, it's so complicated and it's so layered because maybe you love your sibling, but you hate what they're doing. And you love your mom and your dad, but you hate how they're enabling that person. It would make sense. And maybe you'd be like, I got to back out. Like I said, watch my boundaries and I got to back out.
Yeah. I don't want to see this anymore.
Another reason why people go low contact or no contact is favoritism or unequal treatment in the family. Persistent favoritism of one family member over another. Persistently seeing someone is the golden child, someone is the baby and always gets away with behaviors or gets more gifts at Christmas and gets to go on these great trips. And I never got that. Or maybe it wasn't any of that. It was just somebody was just, and you've been in a family like this. There is the golden child. And I hear families kind of joke about it, but I don't think it's really a joke. I think that as parents, we treat each child comes out and each child is different. And like my mom said, I treated you all the same. Like, well, I don't know. And even me, I didn't treat all my kids the same. They're different personalities. I tried to meet them where they were at. Right. I did treat them all the same because Samantha is very different from Marissa, who's very different from Tristan. They're all different kids. We treated them differently. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you have to. They bring different needs to the table and different habits and tendencies. And you have to.
Right. But favoritism, especially if your child has told you that you're being that way, don't diss that. They're telling you something for a reason. Don't poo-poo it. Don't dismiss it. Don't put it down. Listen to them because if they consistently feel that way, they back away. They don't come around as much.
And it might be true. I mean, what they're saying might actually be,
I think,
right?
I think you got to listen to that.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to be able to receive it. And then you're going to need to decide what I'm going to do with that. And hopefully you're going to make some type of change for yourself.
And I think also another reason I said favoritism or unequal treatment, it's scapegoating. I've seen this where they just cut off from their family of origin because they have been unfairly blamed for family problems. I've seen these people in therapy. It's very painful. they really have been scapegoated. They're the air quote problem, the problem child. And they're just like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. They are scapegoated for problems that are not theirs. Maybe there's marital drama or there's marital problems. There's another kid who really is probably a shit disturber and causing problems, but maybe that child is the golden child. That child resonates for the father, resonates for the mother and personality. They're also causing a lot of problems. But instead of looking at that child for who that child is at that moment with their behavior, you're scapegoating the other kid. Maybe, oh, stop complaining. You are the reason why we're having problems in this family.
Right.
I mean, that's awful.
That is terrible.
Isn't that awful?
Jeez.
This stuff happens.
Yeah.
5 years ago, back in 2020, when I started recording this podcast in 19, remember this podcast was called The Real Therapist? And I didn't know how to do The Real Therapist and Coach, Therapist Life Coach. So I just called it The Real Therapist. The branding was all different. But the reason why I started this podcast is because I wanted to talk about all the things that I saw in my office over the past 25 plus years, or more than 30 years of practice and working in psych and working in healthcare, medical healthcare and in psychological healthcare. And I wanted to bring those conversations to the podcast because I wanted to talk about what everybody was talking about in my office. And I thought, and I couldn't do this for confidentiality reasons, but I would think, wow, my 4 o'clock client probably should meet my 7 o'clock client because they would get along really well. They have a lot in common.
Funny.
It was like kind of matchmaking my clients for friendship. But also for them to know that they weren't alone, because everybody felt alone in the 4 walls of my office speaking with me. Yes, I had psychological safety, but my heart went out to them because I would say, you're not alone. You're not alone. And let me tell you how many conversations I've had about this over the years. And that's why I started this podcast. And I know that we go deep in here sometimes, and that's okay. I'm all about the deep dive because these things happen in families. And I want to put it on blast that you're not alone. That's what this podcast is about. And so, yes, I'm giving you tips I'm coaching y'all up to move you forward. And at the same time, we are talking about therapy and trauma and going back.
Absolutely.
It's a part of life.
Yeah.
It's a part of life.
Yeah. And if you think about those early episodes, I mean, it's everything you said, and it's also you being vulnerable, just showing of yourself a little bit more. And think about a lot of those episodes at the beginning were interviews, right?
Yes, they were all interviews in the very beginning. You and I weren't doing this until 23, I think.
Yeah, and it was like allowing yourself to ask the questions to open up the guest to the world, to share that story that maybe they weren't comfortable sharing. That's why we called it The Real Therapist.
And there was a lot of vulnerability on behalf of my guests.
Big
Man,
time.
I really kudos to them and big air hugs to all of them who came on, because there were some real vulnerable, exposing conversations back then, which I was so appreciative. They wanted to tell their story. There was something for all of us to take away.
Absolutely.
Of what they had been through.
Yeah. And you still throw some of those in there. I mean, there were a couple in the last couple months that were like that.
Now it's more authors and thought leaders and people who have something to share, which I still find also very interesting. And I learned from all of them.
Sure.
I mean, Tracy Yokas was on not long ago, and she wrote that amazing memoir book about her raising her daughter with an eating disorder and all that she went through and the difficulty in access to care, mental health care for her daughter. What a gift. I read that book in a day. I couldn't put it down. And I was so thankful that she made herself vulnerable and really exposed her husband and her daughter, who now is an adult, who knew about the book and obviously was okay with it. She really gave us an inside look at what it was like trying to get your child care, especially when she was met with resistance from her daughter, and then the eating disorder community and insurance, and when insurance wouldn't pay for this and pay for that, how she'd get kicked out of programs because she wasn't air quote compliant and they didn't want to deal with her. The aloneness that she felt, my heart just went out to her. So I'm so appreciative of people who come on here and share their stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So those will always continue. We are well into 2025. How are you all doing with your New Year's resolutions? Are you meeting those goals? How about those nutrition and fitness goals? Hey, I understand there is no perfection in anything that we're doing in life. But one thing that I have been doing well over the past many years is drinking AG1. I'm all about consistency, but there are days when, I'm just not always going to be able to get in all the vitamins and all the minerals in my foods. That's why I rely on AG1, because I know it's all in there and I'm taking care of my health. It's never too late for you to start a new and healthy habit for 2025. So try AG1 for yourself or give it to someone else as a gift. It's something I've actually been able to stay consistent with. And that's why I've been partnering with AG1 for so many years. And AG1 right now, they're offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3 and K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/Anna to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/Anna to start your new year on a healthier note. Remember, it's never too late to get healthy. Okay, let's go on with this. So I talked about favoritism in families or unequal treatment. And then the next one is unresolved trauma. And I think that this is pretty common sense and goes without saying. Generational trauma that is ignored or denied. And then you go into therapy and you start to really unearth some issues in your family of origin. And if you perceive or feel that it's being ignored or denied, or maybe you've talked to a family member, maybe a parent, the parent has been like, no, that didn't happen. Once again, getting gaslit or dismissing you. Or if there's a history of abuse and neglect that remains unaddressed, people will not address it. That person's going to back away. They really need to back away for their own mental health. They got to take care of themselves. And that's their own working on healing. Not that it's going to be easy, but they're probably trying to heal themselves.
Yeah.
And so what that might mean for them is to step away from the family of origin for quite a bit, or for some, it's impermanent, an indefinite amount of time. Unresolved trauma. The next one is a betrayal of trust. Sharing private information or secrets without consent, telling somebody something and then they share the secret with other people. Engaging in behaviors that directly harm a family member, like financially exploiting somebody. That's a total betrayal of trust. And that's a hard one to get back. I mean, you can earn it back. That probably needs to be lots of work done around that in therapy. Hopefully, maybe you can do it with, sometimes I'll have family members come in together and try to work out these issues. You usually need the help of an outside person. You can see a religious, a clergy person. You can see a coach. There are lots of people out there who are trained who can help you with this. I would see a mental health professional. Number one, I would for this, and start to do the work of trying to gain back trust. It takes time. It just, for many people, could take time, but it takes talking through issues to get back to that place.
I could see this one being a deal breaker, potentially. Yeah. There's certain things, depending upon the severity of it, that you might never get over. It's possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some people may never get beyond that.
Yeah.
And it's understandable.
Of course.
Mismatched values or beliefs is another reason why people go, and I see this quite a bit, low contact or no contact. Differing views on religion. You all know this, 2025. We've been living it like this in this country for a few years now. Differing views on religion, politics, or lifestyle that leads to judgment and alienation. Come on, that's like everywhere today. It's exhausting, the family fights around religion and politics. People just dumping their friends. What happened after November, after it was all over social media? People were saying, if you know someone who voted for Trump, family member, you need to cut them out of your life.
Yeah.
And people were doing that. I don't agree on that. There's a lot of pain around that, a lot of pain.
Yeah.
It's just this refusal to respect a family member's identity. It can be their sexual orientation, their gender identity, their personal choices. I mean, refusing to respect them. That person's probably going to have to back away.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't want somebody living with that form of judgment on them.
No.
You're never the same. You're not as good as, you're a second-class citizen to many of these adults in your family. I think it's awful, awful, awful. But what we really see quite a bit is more the politics in this country. I've seen it with religion too.
Yeah, that's been going on forever.
It's gotten really bad since 2016 with Trump.
It's gotten worse. I think social media plays to that, but this has been going on since, you could make an argument, since the beginning of time.
It has.
Right?
But you could talk. I mean, growing up in the DC area, you could talk about politics and you could disagree. It didn't mean you hated one another and you thought the other person was the devil.
Right.
Capital D. You could still go out. You'd still see politicians on the Hill, from a Republican and Democrat, having a beer at a pub on the Hill.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Now they're like, you're the devil. get away, like the fingers up, like making the sign of a cross, like you need to be exercised because of your political beliefs.
Right.
That's more today.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way in the 90s and the early 2000s. It just wasn't.
No.
And people didn't talk about it as much. If you felt like you were my experience was if you were in mixed company, we remember, Tim, we used to always say, you don't talk about religion and politics at work.
Right.
And we didn't. And if it ever did come up, it didn't come up a lot. I mean, I didn't disagree with a lot of my colleagues, but if there were times I did, I just didn't talk about it.
No.
People now
and you didn't
toe to toe with you.
Yeah. And you didn't have all these platforms.
Yeah.
Where you had the
right.
opportunity to go out there and use your thumbs and go wild. I mean, that just wasn't part of this, right? That didn't fuel the fire.
Yeah. Because you're never going to, you're not looking at them face to face. You're right. That's a good point.
No.
Because today you and I are sitting here together, looking at each other, making eye contact. The conversation would be real different if I was with a friend, a colleague, coworker, we had different political opinions and we were looking at one another. We wouldn't be nasty and putting each other down, telling you to go pound sand.
Yeah.
Something worse than that. We wouldn't do that probably if we were face to face, but on your phones or on your laptop. Oh yeah.
Off you go.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So mismatched values and beliefs is really, unfortunately, a reason why people are going low contact with their family members. Chronic drama is another one. Sort of alluded to this earlier. When there's addiction, you see this, but there are family members who thrive on creating conflict or drama. They love the drama. They just love it. It's stimulating to them. They sort of get off on it and they do something, maybe it does something to their levels of dopamine in their brain, but they do like the drama. That's not good. Chronic melodrama is not good. Chronic drama is also patterns of triangulation. So triangulation in family therapy is 3 people. So take 3 people, look at a triangle in your mind, imagine a triangle and put 3 people in the corners. That's triangulation. So what happens is one family member will pit another family member against each other. We also call it splitting. That's more for splitting. That comes from borderline personality disorder, but you don't have to have borderline personality disorder to be a splitter. So splitting is when you will talk about like I will go and talk to you, like I'll talk to you, Tim, about one of our kids. Let's say Samantha. And then I'll turn around, I'll go to Samantha and I'll talk to Samantha about you. So I'll get the 2 of you really mad at each other. And all the time, I'm the shit disturber who's done that.
Right.
You guys are really mad at each other. And so I saw that a lot when I worked in psych and when I worked in eating disorders. And so the way to deal with that is to bring everybody together, talk it through and you confront the person who's doing the splitting or causing the drama. And once they have had to face, usually what happens is they stop doing it because, they got confronted with the splitting.
Right.
So it's triangulation. So we see that this happens all the time in families. So one person will pit 2 other people against each other.
Yeah.
So that sort of drama and if family members can't tolerate it, don't like being confronted, what happens is the person who sees that it's happening, is a victim of it, will start to back away. And they need to, because it's really unhealthy.
Absolutely.
Pattern of behavior and communicating.
Absolutely.
It's dysfunctional. It's beyond dysfunctional. I'd say it's pathological.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah. And I would say, even if you've never lived that in your family setting,
you've seen it at work.
You've certainly seen it at work.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I know you, because I've talked to you about that's triangulation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think any listener out there is like shaking their head right now, like, oh, shoot, I know exactly what's up.
So if that's you, don't do it.
Right.
If that's you and you're just hearing about it now for the first time, just work on yourself and work on not doing that.
Yeah.
If you've got a problem with one person, go and talk to that person. Don't talk about that person to a colleague, a coworker, family member. Go talk to that person.
Yeah.
That's the way you won't triangulate. And you can get yourself into a splitting situation. And sometimes I think people don't mean to do it and they find they're in this drama. Don't cause splitting. Don't be a triangulator. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's you, work on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Work on your awareness around that for yourself.
I mean, it's so divisive. Like you know what I mean? And,
Really
and
divisive.
sometimes it's like it affects the culture
Mhm.
of your office, of your building.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely
And
affects
it's
the
like,
culture.
whoa,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's just not good. And now you've involved far too many people in this. And it's like,
Everybody else around you is exasperated.
they're like, stop.
rolling their eyes.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it makes other people actually go low contact because they don't want to be around it.
Right.
They're working on their boundaries in the workplace and at home. Like, I'm not around. You'll see it in families where people, certain kids are always in their bedroom. They're always taking the car to go somewhere. They don't want to be around it.
Yeah.
They know it's not right. It doesn't feel good to them. And sometimes they can't even put their finger on what that is. Well, they see the drama, and upon further investigation and exploration, usually in a professional setting with a coach or therapist, they will see that, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah.
That's why I behave that way. That's why I'm always trying to get the hell out of the house. Well,
Right.
yeah, because at some level you intuit that this just doesn't feel right to you.
Yeah.
And everybody's getting upset and there's a lot of drama here. I
Yeah.
don't want to be around it.
I'm thinking back, like now I can see there are moments where I went low contact, no contact in a work setting
You did. Yeah.
because it was just toxic, right?
Yes,
And to jump
yes.
in the middle of that, it's like, whoa, no.
And you're smart to do that. And I've seen it in, you believe it, even in psychology field, that therapists and coaches, I mean, we can be really bad. I mean, you'd be surprised. We're humans too. And I'm surprised at the stuff I've seen over the years. And it's like, yep, taking my lunch, going to sit in the conference room. I've even sat in the stairwell, eaten in the stairwell in certain jobs. Like, I'm not going to be around this. This is like two people are talking about another therapist or
Yeah.
not a lot. I saw this in my 20s when we were all a bit younger. We had less life experience. You did see it. People were critical of the other person. They're always coming in late or sometimes criticizing someone's work ethic or how they were practicing. It wasn't good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to stay away from that because
Yeah.
I didn't want to even be associated that I was even in the room because I didn't want the other person to think I was in the conversation.
Right.
So, okay, what's another reason why people go low contact is a lack of accountability, refusing to acknowledge the harm that maybe you did or take responsibility for your actions. Just nope, nope, nope. I will not be held accountable and you will not call me out on this and I ain't going to own it. Nope, not doing it. Well, the other person's like, I'm going to be out here. Avoiding difficult conversations or reconciliation efforts. So many times the way to heal is you got to have those difficult conversations. The other person avoids it, doesn't want it. And then when the conversation happens, the other person gets very defensive and come out attacking or just won't acknowledge, won't take ownership of and their part of what has happened. So the other person's like, I'm out. Why am I even around this? I'm not doing this anymore because
Yeah.
I need to take care of my mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially if you feel like it's a dead end. It's like we've always talked about, like you get into these big conversations with somebody, whether it's religion, politics, whatever, there's 0% chance that the other person is changing their view. And that's similar to what you're speaking of now.
I wouldn't say zero. Yeah, low.
It's super low.
People are really dug in.
Yes.
I think it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse.
But yeah, you're right. I was going to say politics and religion are different than family relationships, but I have to say,
No,
today,
they're not.
I don't think they are.
They're not.
I don't think
They're
they
not.
are.
And
Yeah.
so if you're that person and you know that that person's not changing, in this case, forget about the politics and religion part, but like they're not changing, they're not owning, they're not accepting any responsibility and they never will. Like at some point you got to be like, okay, I'm going to have to just not do this anymore, right?
So that's perfect. Leads into, I have two more points here to make about why people go low contact or no contact with their family members. That leads perfectly into the person is emotionally exhausted. It's just exhaustion. It's exhausting to be around this, to find no resolve, to not be able to get beyond. The person won't take responsibility. Maybe you've taken a risk by talking with them about how you feel, and they're like, nope, nope, nope. It's hard to do. These are hard conversations. Or a family member consistently relies on another person for emotional support without reciprocation. That's hard. So you go to a family member and you give support to that family member, but then when you need support for something that you're feeling or experiencing in the family and that person's not there for you, and they don't want to listen to you, they don't have time, it's like, okay, this is BS. I'm coming to you for support. I certainly are there when you want to talk to me about mom, dad, but now I'm coming to you to talk to you about something that I'm going through, but you don't want to listen to anything that I have to say about maybe you or mom, or even something with my boyfriend or my girlfriend or something at work, and you don't listen. You're all about talking about your stuff, whether it be mom or one of their kids, or maybe something with you at work, but you don't reciprocate.
Yeah.
Lot of talking, little bit of listening.
Right.
That's a recipe for people backing away from you. We got to learn to listen better. I always say this in the podcast. You all know it. I mean, there's certain things, if you listen to this podcast, I say over and over and over on repeat because it's important. There's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen, we all need to listen better. I'm guilty of it too. I need to listen better to you. I need to listen better. I worked on it with the kids. Probably you, Tim. Probably you the most. I need to listen better.
There you go.
But it's,
I think we're recording this, right?
yeah, we are recording. Yeah. But it's important,
Yeah.
we feel like, wow, the person's always talking, and I'm really trying to give them emotional support. And I think that they even appreciate it. But when I got something going on, either within the family or outside, they don't listen.
Right.
I feel like there's a little support. And I think, like I said, emotional exhaustion, we can feel totally drained by drama in families. And I think that if there's a meaningful connection, and what is the benefit of continuing to do this? Because we're not really connected. And a lot of what this is just exhausting for me. People back away.
Yeah.
You trap more bees with honey than vinegar, right? You want your family members coming around because there's joy, there's laughter, there's happiness, there's warmth.
Yeah.
There's come on in. What can I get you to drink? For many people, many cultures, it's food. It's relaxation. It's a place to lay your hat. It's a place to just get comfortable. And if you don't have that, and there's all this whole list, or even parts of what's on this list today, it's understandable why people back away from family members.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is predictability, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that can be a really good thing, right? If you kind of know what's going to go down, right? Because you've seen it, you've lived it again and again. Predictability can be a wonderful thing. But there's the other side of predictability where you've seen it not be so good and it's fallen apart again and again and again. And if you're on the fence with that and you're not really sure where it's going to go in a situation with somebody who's had predictability in the way they've behaved or talked or whatever, you're like, you're almost frozen.
Right.
Like, you're like, what to do with that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So finally, why do people go low contact or no contact with family? They're protecting their mental health. At the end of the day, they're protecting their mental health. So they recognize that this continued involvement is detrimental to their well-being. And let me tell you, it's a big, big decision. And I don't see a lot of no contact. I really don't. I really, really don't. Now, if they're seeing me, I'm working with them on trying to fix and repair relationship, move towards that person repair. I mean, that's all my training and couples therapy and the Gottman training, John and Julie Gottman. It's all my training. We in family systems theory, acceptance and commitment theory. And I'm going to talk more about this in next week's episode that we're doing about not controlling other people. But this is all my training. So if someone's going no contact, as a therapist, I've seen it. And I'm not going to tell my client what to do. It's their life. I'm not invested in their outcome. That's not my job. My job is to be there for you, help you think of a situation from different angles. But I'm in your corner. I've got your back. It is a rare thing. I see low contact. I see that. I do see that. But no contact is pretty severe. It's a big, big decision. But if they're doing it to protect mental health most times. Now, people who are doing it that are not in therapy, I don't know. But the people who are coming to me, and even in coaching, they're thoughtful. That's why they're in therapy. They're thinking it through. And usually there have been many, many, many attempts at repairing a relationship before they've gone no contact. It's not a one and done. And maybe for many of them, it's been a lifetime. And then they finally said, I can't do this anymore. I'm actually dealing with the clinical depression now. I've actually got some problems here in my own life. And this part, that's a part of it. They just are choosing peace over this ongoing dysfunction or toxicity in their life. They want peace.
Yeah.
And for many people, they have to go low contact. For some, it's no contact to finally get peace in their lives. Okay.
You know what I would find a fascinating follow-up to this conversation? So we seem to be in this moment of labeling stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so it's not that this stuff hasn't occurred in the past. It's just there was no name for it.
Right.
Right. But we're real big in labeling right now.
We are. Yes.
I would be fascinated to come up with a list of like these different things that now have this new label and to drill down on them. I think that'd be kind of a cool conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked, I think on the podcast, or you and I have had conversations about all the labels today. Everybody, like the word trigger. I mean, we're going to end in a minute, but I'll end with this. I mean, the word trigger was something that patients used to use when I worked in psych and in the eating disorder program, and it was appropriate. And that's where I first heard it. Like that was a trigger for me. That triggered me. That was 30 years ago. Now I hear it all the time. People say, that triggers me. That triggers me. It's gone, I think, too far. I think that everybody's using the word narcissistic. My mom's a narcissist. My old boyfriend was a narcissist. I think a lot of people have narcissistic tendencies. I think it's less than 2% of the population actually has a narcissistic NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. Many of us have narcissistic features, but I never forget my old boss, psychiatrist, Steve Galston. Shout out to Steve Galston. He taught me a lot. He was a great psychiatrist. And he said, everybody's got a little bit of narcissism in them. That doesn't mean that you are a narcissist. It's kind of part of a healthy ego in a way. Everybody at times is into themselves and their self-image and how they look. It's really true narcissist just has no empathy. They really have no empathy for other people. So it drives me crazy, especially on social media when everybody's an expert in mental health and thinks they know, or I'm going to say this, some mental health advocates, or even some of the people in the coaching space who are not trained licensed mental health people. And they're like, how you know you were dating a narcissist. Please be careful with all that. Please vet who you watch in social media, because I think everybody today is an expert. And I'm getting tired of it, even myself. I really am very choosy about who I follow and who I watch, because I think to this point, like everything's got a label. There's a judgment of a good or bad. Yeah. So I'll say the word trigger and narcissistic are two that I hear all the time now.
Yeah.
So be careful, everyone, of who you watch and who you listen to. Make sure they've got the goods. Make sure they know their stuff.
It's good advice.
Okay. All right. So I hope that this was helpful. This was about why people go low contact and no contact. No contact is more of a rare thing. Even going low contact, it's not taken lightly. This is a really serious topic, and it's usually one that's filled with quite a bit of pain. So hope that this is helpful. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast 5 stars. Reach out to me if you want to work with me, either in therapy or in coaching. Okay. Mad love, everyone.